You are also, I think it's safe to say, a competitive star. Nope, not StarCraft. That was racist. I'm gonna start the whole video over. So Cisco, in addition to being our intern, is also a competitive Counter-Strike player. What makes you a competitive Counter-Strike player? Are you using a trackball? Is that competitive?
No, but there was actually a phase of pros who did switch to trackballs for some reason. That was weird.
It's like the 80s in fashion. We look back on it now and it's like, that was stupid. Why were we using trackballs?
Yeah, pretty much.
Were you ever a trackball player?
No, dear God, no.
No.
I've been playing Counter-Strike. I had a bad uncle introduce me to it in like the year 2000. So this is
How old
back
were you
in
then?
5.
You were 5.
I was in kindergarten when I started playing Counter-Strike.
Which I think, if I'm doing the math right, means that you've been playing Counter-Strike literally most of your life. Like most of the time you've been alive, you've been a CS player,
About
right?
3/4 of my life, yeah.
Holy shit. Okay. That's a lot of Counter-Strike.
That is a lot of Counter-Strike.
A lot of DE Dust.
DE Dust 2.
2, sorry.
That's the one we
Whoops.
like.
So what is competitive CS even like?
So Counter-Strike was in this weird place, and now with the release of the third game, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, everyone's kind of converging, because for the longest time, there was two like totally split communities.
Okay.
There was the original Counter-Strike players, which was 1.6. That wasn't the original version, but that's what developed from the original Half-Life mod.
Yeah.
And then you had Source players, and then you had this weird percentage of people who played Condition Zero, which it's like 1.6 with skins.
Jeez.
And it had a single player that no one played. But so these Source players and these 1.6 players, they always had these two completely different scenes. Now back in the day of like 2000, earlier 2000s, 1.6 was like the total king of esports.
Okay.
Right? It kind of...
I feel like that was the first competitive shooter I actually heard people talk about was Counter-Strike. Like vanilla Counter-Strike, yeah.
You had things like Quake and stuff, but Counter-Strike was so crazy big.
Yeah.
And the thing is, 1.6 still is super massive. Like there's still a bunch of viewers in Brazil and other places.
Of old-timey Half-Life mod Counter-Strike?
Yeah, so you had these 1.6 players and Source players, and they hated each other's games. Well, they didn't hate each other's games, but they weren't gonna switch. And so now, we saw like the Counter-Strike community, instead of being like one big unified crazy entity, we saw two separate things, and it was kind of sad.
And they were able to bridge the gap with CSGO?
It's seeming that way now.
That's really crazy. That seems like an impossible...
A bunch of pros are starting to come over to CSGO. Well, they've been coming for a long time now.
It feels to me like, I mean, there's so many competitive games that got sequels that the competitive community dismissed, right? Like, think about the reaction to Smash Brothers Brawl from the competitive Melee community and how they were like, actually not, yeah, I don't like that. Like, it seems like an impossible ask for a developer to make a sequel to a game that's been competitive for a decade.
Yeah.
And the fact that they pulled it off, and apparently the community is mostly down with it, that's insane to me. I didn't think that was possible.
And the numbers for Counter-Strike Global Offensive, like once it came out, it went from like the release of the actual game, it was being developed by, I forget their name, but...
Was it Blue Point or something?
Something like that. It was originally meant to just be like CSS on consoles, but then they switched it into a whole different thing. But when it originally came out, it was in beta for a long time, similar to Dota 2. The transition period, like nothing particularly interesting changed. So it still had this like long year of just Valve adding and making changes to it. And now like you're seeing like the crazy growth of the game, and it's like making me super happy as a Counter-Strike player. Like a few months ago at DreamHack Winter, there was like 75,000 viewers for the final, and then just like the IEM Katowice, there was like over 200,000 viewers for the final.
Holy shit.
So it like tripled almost in just a matter of months.
Wow.
And that's partly due to the Steam sales and everything like that.
Yeah, when you can get into CS:GO for like $3.75, there's no excuse not to.
Yeah. The only problem is there was like a bunch of hackers for a long time, but it's getting better. And you know, like the inbuilt matchmaking system, no longer having to pay for like a service or like set up your own games, it's so crazy helpful. And it's finding like, because Counter-Strike is like the least accessible shooter, like one of the least accessible shooters.
It and Arma, I guess. I don't know that in a world where Arma 3 exists. You think Arma 3 is more accessible than Counter-Strike?
Honestly, for like being competitive and having fun, Yes.
Okay, to get into that community specifically. You were also telling me something about like a knife that is functionally identical to the default knife but has a skin, so it costs a bunch of dollars.
So Valve's been doing this crazy cool thing where they're putting a bunch of cosmetics that don't actually affect the game into their games. It started with Team Fortress a few years ago.
They're League of
right?
Legending it a little bit.
Dota 2. So Counter-Strike, I think, has the most expensive items on the market right now. I was actually reading the other day, there was like this Karambit knife, which does a cool little spinny thing when you pull it out. And that's the only difference. It looks cool and it does a cool little spinny animation.
Like an animation?
Yeah. Some dude paid like an extremely high amount, like upwards of like $10,000 for the knife.
Off, man. Nerds have too much money.
Like it really, I can't express with words how happy it makes me.
It's
that
fun
Global
watching.
Offensive is like growing.
It's like fun watching your favorite sport get popular, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Except there's an E.
Have you ever been to any tournaments?
I used to play in this LAN cafe in San Francisco called Evo back in the day when I was a little kid.
It's called Evo?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was along Terraville.
There's a really great fighting game cafe called Counter-Strike. That's it. That's the joke. That's the whole joke.
That's a really good.
Thanks. I worked hard on that joke.
LAN cafe fun.
It's my best joke that I've ever made for you.
But yeah, I used to go there all the time, and I still talk to some people that I played with from there. We're all Steam friends.
Bringing people together.
Bringing people together.
What's your Steam
yelling at each other.
username, by the way?
Well, I have a K-pop avatar.
Cool.
And
so far, so good.
My name is An Sohee in Hangul, and she's a former member of the Wonder Girls.
Ah,
with
so
hearts. I got
it's not
hearts.
Lana Del Rey anymore, is what you're telling me.
No, it's not Lana Del Rey.
You've moved on?
I'm going through a phase right now.
Okay, K-pop phase.